Hello and welcome to aTech. Today, a colossal project promises to connect the Caspian Sea to the Black Sea and transform the heart of the Eurasian continent. How could a 700-kilometer canal offer the landlocked countries of Central Asia direct access to the world's oceans? Why do Russia, Kazakhstan, and potentially China see this project as both a geopolitical weapon and a commercial corridor? And finally, what technical, financial, and environmental challenges could tip the Eurasian Canal from a strategic dream to a historical reality on par with Suez or Panama? Let's dive behind the scenes of this mega project suspended between ambition and uncertainty. At the heart of this project lies a simple, age-old constraint. The Caspian Sea is a gigantic cul-de-sac. This closed sea, shared between Russia, Kazakhstan, Iran, Azerbaijan, and Turkmenistan, holds enormous reserves of oil, gas, and grain, but has no natural outlet to the world's oceans. Historically, the only functioning maritime link for intercontinental transit has been the Volga-Don Canal, commissioned in the early 1950s under the USSR. Just over 100 kilometers long and equipped with 13 locks, this river corridor is now showing its age and struggling with modern vessel sizes. It only allows the passage of ships around 5,000 tons with a draft limited to 3.5 meters. This restricted capacity makes it a bottleneck. Slow traffic, strictly seasonal navigation, and a severe limit on export ambitions. For Kazakh wheat exporters or Caspian hydrocarbon producers, every ton shipped depends on transit agreements and infrastructure over which they have only partial control. It's in the response to this dependence and physical limitation that the idea of a new corridor emerged in the early 2000s, the Eurasia Canal. The proposed route follows the Kumamanik geological depression, a long natural corridor connecting the lower Don Valley to the Caspian region, which already supports a chain of lakes and reservoirs. In 2007, Kazakh President Nursultan Nazarbayev officially presented the project for a deep water canal of about 700 kilometers to Russia. The ambition is clear. The new canal would be sized to accommodate vessels of 10,000 to 15,000 tons, with a planned depth of around 6.5 to 7 meters. The goal is nothing less than to nearly triple transit capacity compared to the Volga-Don, and to elevate the future corridor to the rank of the world's major maritime routes, offering Caspian ports direct access to the Black Sea, and then, via the Turkish Straits, to the Mediterranean and the oceans. Behind the technical aspects, this endeavor outlines a geopolitical vision that restructures the Eurasian chessboard. For Kazakhstan, a vast country with no access to warm seas, this canal signifies strategic emancipation. It would allow the export of wheat, oil, and minerals without depending so heavily on Russian, Caucasian, or Iranian networks, ensuring a vital diversification of trade routes. For Russia, the interest is twofold. It involves modernizing a logistical axis inherited from the Soviet era to consolidate its role as a major pivot between Central Asia, Europe, and the Middle East, while also capturing substantial transit fees and foreign investment. As for China, engaged in its Belt and Road Initiative, the Eurasia Canal could become an additional essential link in a vast system of multimodal corridors connecting Asia to Europe. Specialized sources mention discussing where Beijing appears as a natural candidate to finance and build part of its project, capitalizing on its experience with major international hydraulic engineering projects. In the background, the structural issue is one of anticipation. In a world where land and sea corridors are being reshaped by sanctions, conflicts, and logistical crises, the ability to bypass saturated or vulnerable choke points becomes a decisive asset for economic sovereignty and power projection. From an engineering standpoint, the Eurasia Canal promises to be a titanic undertaking, comparable in scale and complexity to the challenges met to the Suez or Panama canals. Preliminary studies mention the need to excavate millions of cubic meters of earth to transform a semi-arid depression into a continuous navigable artery. The topography presents a major difficulty. The Caspian Sea lies approximately 28 meters below the sea level. To connect its waters to the hydrological basins leading to the Black Sea, ships would need to overcome several successive levels, necessitating the construction of a sophisticated system of multiple locks and powerful pumping stations. These complex hydraulic structures would not only have to ensure the passage of ships, but also, crucially, preserve the water resource balance of the regions crossed, which are particularly arid. The terrain itself presents constant challenges: soils susceptible to erosion, the need to reinforce hundreds of kilometers of banks, and the imperative to create compensation basins to carefully manage salinity and water quality. For this corridor to be viable, it wouldn't be enough just to dig. It would also be necessary to simultaneously modernize the roads, railways, oil and gas pipelines that already run along the Kumamanic Depression, transforming the entire area into a true integrated multimodal corridor. However, the main obstacle keeping the project at its conceptual stage isn't technical, it's fundamentally financial and political. Cost estimates vary widely, ranging from several $billion for a minimal version to amounts potentially exceeding $20 billion for a high-capacity version. Such a financial commitment represents a colossal sum for economies subject to sanctions, fluctuation in energy prices, and geopolitical uncertainties. Despite the recurring interest shown by Moscow and Astana, which have set up joint working groups and commissioned feasibility studies, no final go-ahead has been given. The main stumbling block lies in the absence of a solid economic model accepted by all stakeholders. Some analysts doubt that the most optimistic traffic projections will materialize, pointing out that oil and gas flows are increasingly moving towards pipelines and that long-term maritime demand could be affected by the energy transition. Furthermore, an external political factor limits the promised strategic autonomy. Even if the Eurasia Canal opened the Caspian to the Black Sea, passage to the Mediterranean would remain subject to the international conventions governing the Turkish Straits and thus, indirectly, to the political will of Ankara. Adding to the economic uncertainties are serious environmental concerns that could have irreversible consequences. Drastically altering the hydrological balances of a region made up of steep salt lakes and fragile wetlands could permanently affect biodiversity, migratory fish, and surrounding agricultural lands. Researchers warn of risks including increased salinization of soils and groundwater, as well as disruption to ecosystems already under pressure from climate change. Water management is crucial. If water exchanges between basins alter the levels and chemical composition of the lakes and rivers in the Kumamanic corridor, the ecological degradation could be significant. Project proponents mention migration measures, but acknowledge that long-term impacts are difficult to anticipate. Finally, the Eurasia Canal heightens regional tensions. Some neighbors fear seeing Russia strengthen its control over maritime routes in the Caspian and the Sea of Azov. This project is part of a veritable game of corridors where each route for a railway, oil pipeline, or competing canal becomes an instrument of economic influence and political alignment. In 2025, the Eurasia Canal remains at the stage of a structured idea of technical parameteorization. If it were to materialize, construction would span at least a decade, pushing a potential commissioning date towards the end of the 2030s or beyond. Until then, this project remains a mirror of tensions of our time, between openness and control, between colossal infrastructure and a fragile environment, between the promise of a new prosperity and the risk of irreversible choices. That concludes this analysis. Thank you for following along to the end. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like and tell us your opinion of this situation in the comments. New episodes are coming soon, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to stay updated. See you very soon.